Hi, you're listening to a student-focused episode of the Sociology Show podcast. If you're studying the subject at GCSE, A-level, foundation, degree, or any other discipline, then this podcast could be of help to you. If you have a question for the show, then you can email the Sociology Show podcast at gmail.com, and one of the teachers, lecturers, examiners, or experts will answer your question for you. You can sponsor the show on the GoFundMe page and subscribe on all the usual podcast platforms. If you're going to class, going to the gym, or just chilling, put your headphones in and let's be sociology geeks together, eh? Hello and welcome to the Sociology Show podcast. This episode is a student takeover episode featuring Emily from Westcliff High School for Girls, and she's going to be talking about the relationship between capitalism and the patriarchy. Thank you very much for Emily for sending me on a sound clip. If you would like to get involved and you'd like to do a student takeover, then please do put together an MP3 file. It can be as long as you like. It can be 5 minutes long. It can be 30 minutes long, completely up to you. But if you have got something you'd like to speak out on, then do send over MP3s to the Sociology Show podcast at gmail.com. Now, before we get into the episode today, I've just got a couple of requests. First of all, the Sociology Show podcast has now got a YouTube channel. I've got some old episodes on there, so some classic sort of interviews that I've done, but also recently I've been recording the visual video as well, so not just the audio file. The last two episodes, we've got Dr. Poppy Gibson, who came on to talk about social media and mental health. And then also I was lucky enough to interview the comedian Joe Wilkinson talking about alcohol or being alcohol free and living a sober lifestyle. So please do add yourself to the Sociology Show podcast, and can you subscribe as well? The more we have subscribers on the channel, the bigger it can grow and the better it can get. The Sociology Show podcast is also on Instagram, so if you are an Insta user, please do search for the account. What I aim to do is each time an episode is released, I will send out a little reminder, a little visual to send you in the direction of any new episodes that do arrive. Sociology Show podcast is also on Twitter as well. The Twitter account is actually quite popular. I've almost got 5,000 followers on there. It's been up and running for a while, but if you do use Twitter, then do find our account on there too. The last thing is a bit of a plea, but I do have a GoFundMe account. If you search for the Sociology Show podcast on GoFundMe, why am I asking for money? Well, at the moment, I'm paying for everything out of my own pocket. The hosting costs are quite expensive, but also the aim is to invest in some better recording equipment, some better cameras, some better lighting, some better microphones and so on. And in order to make even better YouTube videos and better podcasts, then some new equipment would be fantastic. So if you can even spare even as little as £5, then please do go to the GoFundMe page. And if you are able to donate a small amount, then I can send you a Sociology Show pen just as a small thank you for your support of the show. So without further ado, let's go over to Emily, who's going to be talking about the relationship between capitalism and patriarchy. Thank you, Emily, and enjoy.
Hello, my name is Emily. I'm a Year 12 Sociology student from Westcliff High School for Girls. I'm looking at the relationship between capitalism and the patriarchy because I consider myself a feminist and I'm passionate about fighting inequalities. It's also quite interesting that different parts of society can be so intrinsically linked. So before I really delve into it, it's important to establish two key questions that are going to run throughout this. So how are capitalism and the patriarchy intrinsically linked? And what does this answer mean in the 21st century? So it's important to define these key terms. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, patriarchy is a system or society of government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it. And capitalism is an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit. In order to get a clear view on this, I'm going to be exploring some Marxist viewpoints and some feminist viewpoints, and then applying them to contemporary issues. The first feminist is called Denise Komena, and she's a militant feminist, activist, and one of the founders of the Committee for the Abolition of Illegitimate Debt. And the essay I'm going to be referencing is how patriarchy and capitalism combine to aggravate the oppression of women. So her key points are that women's work at home is undervalued. So this is things like the chores that they do that kind of go unnoticed, and obviously doesn't contribute to the economy directly, but is a key role in keeping society stable. The most kind of obvious one that people who don't study sociology may think of is the gender pay gap. And this is where men get paid more than women for doing the same job. She also argues that capitalism thrives off of a form of exploitation. And she argues that this form of exploitation is the patriarchy. Another one of her key points is that women are kind of used when there's a hardship, so they'll be called on for extra labour, and as soon as they're not needed anymore, they're returned to their rightful place. And I put that in quotation marks because obviously that's a very traditional view to have. And the rightful place that she's referencing is more likely the home, where obviously like the men would be the breadwinner. She also includes men in her argument too, and she links it with toxic masculinity. So this is where men like to be the breadwinners, so then women are forced to stay at home almost by default, and this enforces a patriarchy and obviously then relates to capitalism and as they are not the ones working. So the second feminist is Michelle Barrett, who's a Marxist feminist. And she's also a social theorist and professor. And the essay that I'm drawing her ideas from is Ideology and the Cultural Production of Gender in the book Women's Oppression Today, the Marxist Feminist Encounter. And she argues that throughout the Marxist view through history, women have kind of been disregarded and it's ignored women's issues, and that there is a relation that exists between the gender struggle and the class struggle. And that's basically summing up both capitalism and patriarchy, as capitalism relates to the differences in wealth and patriarchy links to the differences in gender. The next feminist is Fran Ansley, and she argues that the family is used by capitalism to oppress women, and that women are almost used to absorb men's frustrations created by capitalism. And this can turn into things like when men go home from their day of work, they're angry by their jobs and they're angry by the system. And obviously this has negative impact then for the women and the rest of the family. Parsons has this idea called stabilised adult personalities. So what Ansley does is she turns this into a Marxist idea, saying that this is not positive and that socialisation is here to make women passive. So the final Marxist I'm going to be looking at is called Eli Zaretsky. And he has a similar idea to Ainsley, where family works in the interest of capitalism, and that the family is unable to provide a nurturing environment and a homely environment due to capitalism, and instead it's used to kind of rebuild the family structure as the result of capitalism is so damaging towards the family. However, there are some criticisms of this idea, as it's believed to be an outdated ideology, as roles have changed within the family. And it's not just the nuclear family anymore, you have different family setups and structures. So this links to COVID as a 21st century contemporary issue, and women's jobs are 1.8 times more vulnerable to COVID than men's jobs. Women make up 39% of global employment, but account for 54% of overall job losses. And the reason why I think this has been so emphasised by COVID is that women are deemed to be the main caregivers, and obviously unpaid care was needed more than ever in the pandemic, as children weren't going to school, so the women had to maybe give up their jobs or decrease the amount of hours they worked to care for their children, which obviously put their jobs more at risk. So how can we link this to other theories? So New Right have a traditional view on the family, and we can also link this to the Back to Basics campaign in 1993, which encouraged the return of a traditional family. So John Major was the Prime Minister at this time, but he was very hypocritical, as the cabinet was plagued with rumours of infidelity, whilst he was preaching back to basic and return to traditional families. And a postmodernist theory on this is that obviously they believe in the death of gender and the death of class. So the concept of capitalism and patriarchy are almost irrelevant to them, as they don't believe in the construction of gender and class, which is what the two factors that influence both capitalism and the patriarchy. So the overall conclusion, and what links many of these theorists, is that free labour that women carry out at home is not recognised and does not contribute to the economy, and this can be a form of exploitation. And I think it's important to note that patriarchy did come before capitalism, and you can almost say that capitalism is the fuel to the fire that allows the patriarchy to continue on in the 21st century. And this is also exacerbated by COVID. We still have COVID, and obviously you saw that this has impacted women's jobs a lot more than men. So I think the evidence suggests that there is an intrinsic link between capitalism and the patriarchy, and that it's important to recognise this and notice this in order to move forward and make actual change. So thank you for listening to this. I hope you enjoyed.
The Sociology Show podcast relies on the kind contributions of sponsorship and donations. If you enjoy the show, then you can help with the hosting costs by donating as little as £5 on the GoFundMe page. Simply visit uk.gofundme.com and search for The Sociology Show. If you can donate, then you will be sent a Sociology Show pen as a small thank you for your continued support of the show.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. If you would like to contact the show or be interviewed, then please email the sociologyshowpodcast@gmail.com.